Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to Awkward Devs 145. Um, just posted the agenda in the chat. Basically, mostly merge related stuff today. Yeah, yeah, and then some around MEV-Boost and the implications there. I guess to start off, the Sepolia post-merge upgrade was supposed to happen yesterday, but because we've had like a lower amount of active validators on the network, it still hasn't hit. So when I checked yesterday, the ETA was about August 21st, which is in like 3 days. So if you run a Sepolia node, you haven't upgraded yet, now is the time to do so. Anyone else have any thoughts on this? Comments? Okay, so next up, we had a mainnet shadow fork today. Perry or Marius, do either of you want to give a quick update?
Hey, yeah, I can give an update. So we had Mainnet Shadow Fork 11 happen about an hour ago. Out of, I think, 99.8 participation before, we're at like 96.5, 97. So that means out of like 35 nodes, 34 made it through. The one node that didn't make it through just hadn't finished syncing. So in terms of like making it through the transition, I think this is the nicest shadow fork we've seen so far. We did notice some invalid blocks being produced by Aragon. We think it's going to be the same issue that we noticed on Gurley, so potentially also the same fix. We'll look into it and check that out. And I think the Nethermind team noticed something with Nimbus, but that was already an old issue and had been, I think it's already in their plan to be fixed. That's about it. Congrats, everyone.
Yeah, that's very good. I don't know if anyone from Nethermind or Aragon wants to chime in more.
So go ahead, Mark.
Okay, so it is a never-ending story with block production and giving enough time for block production for EL, but the fix from Nimbus team is already in PR.
Nice.
Yeah. I think we also noticed it for Lodestar, but maybe Daplion could say something more about it.
Sorry, I have not been personally following this issue.
Okay. And then on the Aragon side, any thoughts, comments?
I'm on holiday this week, so I haven't looked into it, but I saw that Parentosh posted this question in our chat. So maybe Julio from our team will take a look. But also, Parentosh, could you maybe post an example of an invalid block, like if you give us more details, then we can investigate what's happening.
Sure, I can forward the information.
Thank you.
Sweet. Anything else on the mainnet shadow fork? Okay. Next up, so basically we set the TTD on the CL call last week, kind of optimistically assuming the hash rate trends would stay stable, and the 5 gig DAG increase would not like massively change hash rate. So we're basically right below 5 gigs now. I believe we're like at 5 gigs DAG if you include the hash of the block you're mining. We saw a tiny drop in hash rate, but there's a lot of noise in those numbers, so it's quite hard to tell. And previously we had seen a rise over the past week. So it seems like we're still trending nicely. I'm curious to hear from client teams, like if anyone feels like we should change the TTD value, but from like a high level look, it seems like it's probably good to just keep that one. Anyone?
What's the estimated merge date and time if hash rate stays exactly where it's at right now?
September 15th.
Even with the increase that we saw?
Yeah, it's like back to where it was like a couple days ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe just
Bordell was showing about 1:30 a.m. UTC at the beginning was showing about 4 a.m. So it only changed a little bit.
Yeah, and like you can see, like, you know, I just showed my screen, but like there's a bunch of variations. So we went as high as like above 950 and as low as, you know, under 775. So like, yeah, there will continue to be noise, but I think we're trending nicely. And I also saw that like a bunch of clients have started to like merge PRs with this. So given there's no like massive deviation, it's probably easiest to keep that time. Okay, so no disagreement. So I guess in that case, we can go ahead with this TTD. I think client teams can put out releases with this, ideally today or tomorrow, so we can announce them very early next week. And yeah, those will be the releases for mainnet. And like we discussed on the last call, if EL teams want to then upgrade those, like as we approach Bellatrix or right after Bellatrix, we can advertise newer releases, because it is kind of a long stretch before we hit mainnet. But yeah, this is the number. And there's a couple questions in the chat about like what if there was like a huge hash rate drop because of miners selling and whatnot. I think, you know, if we see some massive deviation after Bellatrix has happened, we could always do a TTD override if needed. Ideally not, but yeah, I think we can go forward with this. Have high confidence we're not going to hit it before Bellatrix, and pretty good confidence that like we'll hit it around the 15th. Any other thoughts, comments?
Blog post is going out on Tuesday, is that correct?
Yes. So Tuesday, August 23rd, morning Pacific, you can expect the blog post. And a couple clients said that they're going to put out releases on Monday, the 22nd. So you can, if you want to see your, if you follow your specific client, you'll probably get the release before, but on Tuesday, we'll have all the release combined in a single blog post. Yeah. Any other comments, thoughts on this? Okay, well, yeah, we got it. Mainnet releases. That's pretty exciting. Okay, there were two other things on the agenda.
Do Kiln first.
Okay, yeah, Kiln might be easier to wrap up quickly. Yeah, Perry, you were talking about potentially deprecating Kiln earlier than expected. Do you want to share a bit more on that?
Yeah, so we were just looking at the Kiln network over the last week, and we don't really see that many transactions on there. And it feels like since we have merged two long-standing testnets as well as a third testnet, there's no real reason to keep Kiln around. At this point, we're just kind of doing monthly updates, and it's costing us money and time that could be spent otherwise. So we had already announced that we'd be deprecating Kiln, but that was after the mainnet merge. I'm proposing that we deprecate it a bit earlier.
Right. So yeah, the plan I think was to deprecate it like basically around the mainnet merge, like a month, which is now a month from now. Would you do like even quicker than that, or is like, can we say we just shut it off the day mainnet merges? Is that good enough for you?
I'm fine with either one. I think I have a loose preference for just doing it earlier because at this point, we're not really spending any time updating it. And if no one's using it and it's unupdated and it's costing time and money, there's no real reason for it to be around.
The transactions you see on it, do we have any idea what they are?
No, but I'm assuming they're just some bots that's doing basic value transaction in the hope of some NFT.
There were some people who did promise some Kiln NFTs.
Yeah.
So we, as far as we know, we don't believe there's any apps that are like using Kiln as their testnet or anything. Is that correct?
I don't think so.
And I think most, if not all, have already moved testing to Gurley or Robston or other places. The only other reason to have kept Kiln around was that it was fast to sync, but Sepolia is arguably just as fast.
So I guess just to give people some amount of heads up, could we deprecate it when Bellatrix hits on like September 6th, and we can announce it as part of we can share it as part of the blog post. So we'll have the blog post going out next week, and then we'll give people 2 weeks if they're using it to move off. Or do you think we should deprecate it like basically?
I think deprecating at Bellatrix is okay. I think we should just add it in the blog post next week and then give people another 2 weeks in case they want to fight the decision.
Okay, I like that. And I think and then the worst case, we extended another 2 weeks beyond that, which is what we'd originally advertised. But yeah, yeah, we can make sure to mention it in the merge blog post. Okay, anything else on that?
Nope, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so next up, we had pretty meaty topics, or I guess 2 topics Micah put up. So first, basically the challenges with MEV-Boost and relay censorship, and then kind of at a higher level, how proof of stake and just Ethereum generally can address censorship on the network. I think, like, as per the Discord and Twitter this week, like, people have very strong opinions about this. I think it's also a subject where people have different levels of like degrees to which they're comfortable voicing their opinions for a bunch of reasons. So we can try and have this conversation on the call. Just ask that people kind of be respectful and charitable and mindful that like not everyone wants to voice their opinion about like these complex topics on a live recorded synchronous call. So we can try our best. And I think also it's very much worth separating out the specific concerns around MEV-Boost and like the whole kind of architecture there from the broader higher level concerns of just like censorship resistance, just to make sure that like we can actually ground the like MEV-Boost conversation in like the software and like markets that exist today. Yeah. So with that said, Micah, do you want to kind of give a quick overview of the situation with regards to MEV-Boost and like the problems as you see them?
Sure. I'm actually surprised we have so much time. I thought for sure you were going to find a way to pack the agenda to avoid this topic, but apparently no one else showed up. So just to preface, I do agree with Tim. We should try to keep this conversation focused on the technical stuff as much as possible. I know this conversation may bleed over into more philosophical stuff, but we should really try to avoid that. So the TLDR, for anyone who's been living under a rock, the US government recently sanctioned one of the contracts on Ethereum. So allegedly, depending on how you interpret that, US citizens are not allowed to interact with those contracts. And then some people are interpreting this in different ways. Some people believe that means that if you are a relay, you're not allowed to relay transactions. I would assume that some people also believe this means you can't gossip such transactions. There are some people who believe that you can't interact with any address who has interacted with those sanctioned addresses. There's just a very broad range of beliefs of what this actually means. No one's quite sure yet. So people are implementing different solutions all across the board. For the sake of this group and this discussion, I think the one that impacts us the most is the decision of Flashbots to censor transactions that are coming into the Flashbots relay. I think they actually do it on their builder side. I don't know the exact, I don't remember the exact technical spot where they do the blacklisting, but the functional effect is that if you send a censored transaction to the Flashbots relay, or if it sees one in the mempool, or you send a bundle to them that has it, they will just ignore that bundle or that block or that transaction, and they won't mine it. The problem, of course, is that if we kind of, I'm going to be a little vague here, but if we, launch with MEV-Boost and Flashbot relay, whatever that means, then it means that functionally we're launching with censorship built in from the merge. Like as soon as the merge lands, we've got censorship happening as soon as we hit the ground. Now, there are some caveats here. One, of course, miners can, or validators can choose to run whatever software they want. We can't stop them, and there is no way for us to functionally stop people from censoring. Two, there are, Flashbots isn't the only relay builder. There's also Bloxroute. Bloxroute has 2 relays that will not be, they've asserted will not be censoring, and they have a 3rd relay that they'll be providing that is not live yet, but they plan on building that will be censoring. And then there's a 3rd-party Manifold who claims to be building a relay, but they don't have anything to show for it yet. And so the question I think we have to answer, and this is, again, ideally, if we can answer this somehow without getting into the philosophy, that'd be great, but I don't know if that's going to be possible, is do we want to go into the merge with MEV-Boost and all the associated software and connections and tutorials and documentation, et cetera, when we know that the centralized entities that are going to be in control of this are providing censorship software to their users? I don't think there's an easy answer to this. I mean, I have pretty strong opinions, but even I recognize this is a complex situation, and there's not an easy and obvious answer, especially with Bloxroute, who is, so Flashbots is a little more clear cut, like they're only offering censorship. That's the only option. Bloxroute is a little different because they are offering the user to choose. The caveat there is that we'd be pointing users, say, hey, go check out Bloxroute, and then they go to Bloxroute, and Bloxroute is telling them, hey, this is how you undermine censorship resistance of Ethereum by running this thing. Or if you don't want to undermine Ethereum, run this thing. And so I can definitely see, some people may feel differently on either side. The other caveat I'll say before we start discussing is that I recognize that this is the all core devs call. I recognize it's mostly execution layer devs, and we've kind of handed the keys of the kingdom, so to speak, over to the consensus layer. So the consensus layer is in a better position to actually do something here than I think the execution layer is. The reason I wanted to bring it up is just because the merge is so close. I think there's value in getting the discussion going, and because we do have some consensus layer clients on this call, and so it's a good opportunity just to discuss and talk about it. I think that covers most of the situation. The one thing that I do want to remind anyone who's listening, no clients currently or have any plans of hard coding any specific relay into their client. The clients are only building a client that has a configuration parameter that you can fill out, or you can provide a relay, and then that relay can then do whatever it wants. And so just to be clear, no one on the Ethereum core devs is hard coding censorship in or anything like that. We're just discussing, should we kind of support and encourage these people who are building censorship tools? So that's it for now. We can start a discussion.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a really good overview. Dankrad, I think you've had your hand up first, and then Vitalik.
Yeah, I think first one small comment, Mika, the sanctions are nothing new, right? We had sanctioned addresses before. So like, I think like, this is like an important remark because I think like, Flashbots might actually be doing something stupid, shooting themselves in the foot by doing this. I can understand their behavior, but it might well be that they don't have to do anything at all because miners have gotten away with so far, including sanction transactions, and nothing has happened. But ignoring that, like, I would generally agree with you that we shouldn't be going into the merge if there's only a censored option available. Like, I think that would be a terrible signal, and that would definitely be a huge problem. But I think like thanks to like MEV-Boost, Flashbots now open sourcing their relay and they're being alternatives very likely from the start. I mean, that's definitely something we should ensure. Like, I actually don't think that this is going to be a problem. So I'm actually, in a way, this whole situation could have the effect of actually saving us of the huge problem that was very likely to happen before, that we will only have a single relay, and now we'll actually probably have several from the start. And I expect that a substantial majority will actually be using non-censoring relays. So I think like currently, I think I don't think that we will see the situation that that you fear, that actually there will only be flashbots and they will be censoring, and so like there will be censorship on Ethereum.
Thanks. Vitalik, you had your hand up as well?
Yeah. So I just wanted to kind of give a brief, purely technical comments on the just different kinds of like censorship that might happen. Right. So I think the like one big nuance that it's important for people to understand is the difference between choosing not to include transactions in blocks you create versus soft forking. Right. So soft forking basically means that like if there is a chain that contains transactions that you want to exclude, then you do not create blocks on the chain. You also do not attest to the chain, and you even attest to a competing chain. So you attest to the biggest chain that does not contain the transaction that you want to exclude. So soft forking censorship is not something that is being facilitated by any software that's being developed that I'm aware of today. But it is something that in order to kind of break the Ethereum's transaction inclusion guarantees, only 51% of validators would need to participate, right? So it's a so that would be the more extreme scenario, but it's one that like both require like it only requires a majority, but on the other hand, it's much further away from happening in terms of just like what norms are being considered and what software is being built. The other type of censorship is just basically validators as proposers exercising their ability to put whatever contents they want into their own block, right? And like I think we've even had this discussions about that in the past in the context of like some validators choosing to just make completely empty blocks that contain nothing at all, right? But this kind of censorship is like more closer to realistically happening, but it doesn't have a like a 51% requirement. It has a 100% requirement, right? So if let's say even 80% of validators run software that creates blocks that exclude some particular transaction, then that transaction will on average get included after 5 blocks, because you just have to wait until you get a block created by by someone who does not, right? And if that percentage goes up to 95%, then instead of waiting 5 blocks on average, you'll have to wait 20 blocks, right? So the like basically all that's needed to like really avoid significantly degrading Ethereum's guarantees is basically for if like a relatively small percentage of validators to just be running non-censoring software, which is something that like if it's if needed could even rely on some portion of validators doing it altruistically, right? And then like there are also middle grounds, like, oh, maybe if you don't even want to attest the censoring blocks, then you just kind of stay silent on that epoch entirely. But then I think those are not very realistic, right? Because once you start making distinctions like that, then like once you say, oh, I'm not going to attest up to a censoring chain, but I'm just going to stay completely silent, then you basically stopped validating, and you might as well exit. So that's like basically the kind of the different scenarios that I see, and I think it is important for us to just talk about them separately, because they have there's a different threat model, there's a different kind of upper bound to the harm that they can cause, and there's different responses that they require.
Quick follow-up on that. Isn't the threshold required for a censorious soft fork to occur significantly below 50% due to proposer boost?
Good question.
I thought it was
I don't know off the top of my head the exact answer. And then I think once you get into that stuff, there's also all of these like subtleties around, like, are we talking about censoring some of the time or all of the time? Are we talking about the adversary having an ideal network model, or are we talking about like AAM or a more realistic network? But yeah, it is like somewhere between like 20% and 50%, depending on, I guess, specific assumptions that you use. And like that number will probably increase to be closer to 50% over time as some of the verbs that say come in.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a really useful distinction. I see. Yeah, Victor, you have your hand up. Do you want to just quickly share your thoughts? But I think, do you want to maybe just like quickly introduce yourself and share your thoughts?
Hi, so my name is Victor, and I work mostly on ERC side as a EIP author, and I also help out at Turing. I feel like this problem, if solved at protocol level, would leave people no choice they have to either leave Ethereum or they have to stay at Ethereum, but like accept the censorship altogether. So my take and my position would be solve it at the application layer. And so countries or sovereignties, they can declare that they want something to be under their jurisdiction, and then you have to register through smart contract. And then they can also say that it's a war garden. You either follow their jurisdiction or not. And then everything else just fall as if it's in the real world right now. So that would be my take. So I just simplify. I object to solve it in a protocol level, and I think it can be solved in the application layer.
Thanks. And I see you shared an EIP in the chat. People can definitely like comment there. I do think it's valuable to keep most of the conversation here focused on like basically around the protocol level, because that's the folks we have on the call. But yeah, people who want to, there's definitely a lot that can be done on top of the protocol. And appreciate you sharing the link there.
Thanks, team.
Of course, yeah. Mami, you have your hand up.
Yeah, well, I'll skip my philosophical position. I've replied those in the thread by Mika, but I want to talk about the incentives. So, like 3 days ago, we had no alternatives to a relay besides Flashbot. And many staking pool committed to their users that they will maximize their revenue, and so will run any MEV software, which put us in a delicate position. But now that we have alternatives, what will likely happen is that they will have a choice between running censoring transactions and uncensored transactions, with likely the uncensored being giving most rewards because there are just more transactions to MEV. And lastly, the other thing is that any censoring software could be exploited by just like the dusting that was done with 0.1 ETH that were distributed to many addresses. You can include any censored address and just send them 0.01 ETH, and then your transactions cannot be sandwiched attacked by Flashbots. So if we have any open relay I think the censoring will fall flat on its face.
Thanks. Anyone else have thoughts? Oh, Lucas.
I wanted to make a quick technical argument, just in terms of the there was an argument to remove. I know the argument is less strong given relays, but there's an argument to remove MEV-Boost from consensus layer clients. I just want to point out that that would likely result in 5 forks of consensus layer clients in which there are MEV, Prism, MEV, Teku, etc. Sorry, to remove the builder API. MEV-Boost is a separate piece of software. I misspoke. But to remove the builder API, which would probably result in many forks of software, which is something that I think everyone here does not want to see, as it just introduces potential errors down the line. So I think avoiding that world is also kind of healthy from consensus standpoint.
Yeah, and just to touch on that, because I think from skimming the Discord and Twitter and whatnot, there's like a couple degrees of separation in the software, right? There's like the consensus layer client, which exposes a builder API. MEV-Boost is software developed by Flashbots, which interacts with this builder API to provide basically blocks through it to the consensus client. And then there's many relays who can integrate with, or there's many relays who can be launched to integrate with this builder API. So yeah, there is like a decoupling there that's worth like highlighting. Lucas, you have your hand up?
So I just want to point out that the current implementation of MEV that is running on Mainnet right now is a lot less prone to censorship, because while the nodes that are building the blocks will get bundles that are censored, they still pick transactions from the mempool to fill the block out. So it's like you cannot probably censor it completely. And I don't really like that design that the whole block comes from third party and you cannot add anything to it. It's like the root cause of this problem to some extent.
Right. Does anyone from Flashbots actually want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I can speak a bit about the technical sort of design goals of MEV-Boost. So it is sort of software that helps validators outsource block construction. In particular, sort of the difference that it has from the way that MEV-Geth works is it enables client diversity, and it also allows solo stakers to participate in outsourcing your block without sort of introducing a trust vector. So that's the reason for having full block proposals or full block submissions as opposed to partial block submissions. I think there's some good proposals floating around to be able to augment sort of full block proposals and sort of return them to some partial block constructions, which allows validators to append those transactions to the end of an outsourced block. So, the goal with introducing those modifications is provide more granularity to the transaction types that are proposed, so it's not exclusively a full block outsourcing.
Thanks. Mika, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that I would like to see the most, especially now that we have a couple different relays and the Flashbots relay is open source, people can run their own. I'm less worried than when I originally posted this. I think the thing I would like to see, ideally, from core devs is just social pressure and lobbying to users to don't run relays that censor. I think the core devs have a lot of influence and a lot of power. I think a lot more than they realize they do. And so just, on Twitter, on Reddit, on wherever you go hang out, just if someone asks you, should I run MEV? Tell them yes if there's a non-censoring relay, and tell them no if there's not, and encourage them strongly to go use non-censoring ones. And this is especially true for anyone who's working with these big companies like Coinbase or Lido or whatever. If you're doing community outreach, I think it would go a very long way to just strongly encourage people, don't censor. Try to run things that are non-censorious. When you're recommending things to people, recommend things that don't censor transactions, stuff like that. I think that alone, combined with the fact that hopefully we'll have multiple relays, should be enough to protect us, at least until we can get PBS and something more solid in.
Marius?
Yeah, I'm always trying to convince people to run their stock Geth, their stock Nethermind, or like the stock configuration of the client. That one will give you enough transaction fees, and you don't need to extract MEV. I think if you are a benevolent user of the network, then it's fine to take a 1% or 2% cut a year to in order to be like a good person in the network. So just run your normal client, don't extract MEV, and you won't have this problem anyway.
Right. It is worth noting, like MEV-Boost is not like something that's included by default when you set up your node. It's like an addition that you need to run, and it's not required for node operators. Ahmad, can you introduce yourself and share your comments?
Yeah, hi. It's Ahmed from Nethermind team. I just have a question. If someone from Rocket Pool is here, like, is Rocket Pool planning to keep running MEV-Boost if it kept censoring or not?
I think we can really get into what particular operators are going to do here.
Yeah, I think I would rather like push that to MEV-Boost as forums and like other operators as forums. We don't usually have those folks attend first, and like second, I don't want to set the precedence that we solve all the community level issues on this 90-minute call every 2 weeks. But yeah, I'm sure they have a Discord or like. Terrence?
Yeah, I just want to add on top, like, we definitely should encourage user using the non-sensory option, but it's also important to recommend user, because using MEV-Boost or using the relay network to also block construction is also not risk-free in terms of getting your block as safely out as possible. Because from our preliminary benchmark, right, we're seeing it's actually adding like 2 to 3 times more latency. So that means there's higher chance of your block could get like reorg, right? So we also need to educate that part, also like optimize that part as well.
Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate, like running MEV-Boost out the gate at merge, you're introducing additional technical risk into your setup, and you need to make sure that you're okay with those risks. You're not necessarily introducing risk of slashing or anything like that, but like you're definitely, there's risk that block's not going to make it, or communication is going to fail, or it's just another piece of software that's in this mix. So even if you are going to do this, think about it, ramp up over time maybe.
Thanks. Yeah, and just to make sure like we have time to move on as well, and don't kind of run around in circles too much. Ansgar, we can definitely get to you, but quickly, like Micah, your ask was like, can client teams like advertise, to users that they should run other things than MEV-Boost with some potential censoring relays. It seems like some client teams do that already to different degrees for different reasons. And also that obviously MEV-Boost is not shipped like by default with the clients. So I feel like we've mostly addressed that. Ansgar, happy to take your comment as well. And after that, we can probably move on to like the second part of the conversation.
Yeah, which I think is a good fit because I just wanted to briefly reiterate for people listening to this, like on YouTube and whatnot, just because a lot of this was relatively technical and easy to kind of misunderstand. So just to be perfectly explicit, like after the merge, we will still be in a situation where the network will not be censored. So like if you're, I don't know, in North Korea or something, or want to use Ethereum, or you're in Iran, or like, I don't know, sorry, these may be extreme examples, but like the network will not censor you, right? Like we as long as some proposals don't run some like censorship software, the network as a whole is not censoring you. So all of this just us being proactive about making sure this remains true for long out future. So even though there were like a lot of maybe concerned voices on here right now and after the merge, the network will not be censored. So just to reiterate that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Good segue into the other half of this topic. Also on topic censorship, show a very brief background for those listening. One of the major advantages proof of stake provides us over proof of work is the ability to punish bad actors after the fact via human coordination. And so this ability of us to see that, hey, someone did something wrong, the protocol was unable to handle it, but everybody knows that they did something wrong, they cheated, whatever. Their stake is locked up for quite a while. And so we can then do something. We can do what's called the user activated soft fork or user activated hard fork to address that and take their money. And this provides us with a mechanism to give financial disincentive for anyone doing something that is against the protocol. And this is a very powerful tool that we have at our disposal. Throughout the history of development of proof of stake, there have been a number of blog posts and articles and specifications and whatnot and papers that have all discussed this. And so it's kind of a well-known thing for those that are deep into the technical details of proof of stake and they understand this is part of the design. My concern is that I think a lot of users, like end users and stakers in particular, are not aware that this is actually part of the design of proof of stake. Like this is its really strong point is this ability for the community to fork someone. I think that one of the things in order to make this work, so like if everybody knows that if you know you will be punished severely if you do bad thing X, then you're less likely to do bad thing X. And if that punishment is strong enough and the benefits you gain from doing bad thing X are low enough, no one may ever do bad thing X. And so our hope is that if everybody knows that this threat is there and the threat is very credible, then no one will do the bad thing. We never actually have to do this, take this intervention or take this action. And so the thing that I would like to see, and again, this is not something that anyone will write in code. This is just a social thing. I would like to see as the core dev community, and this is going to be the execution layer and consensus layer both. Consensus layer, again, we've kind of handed the keys over to them, so they have a stronger role here, but I think all of us having a voice in unison is powerful. I think we need to let people know that if we do see reorging style censorship, where there is some cartel that is reorging out blocks that contain certain transactions, that we will write the code for and release software that slashes or penalizes or takes away a stake or does something like reorgs out those stakers. Whatever we do, we will do something to push back on that. Now, of course, we cannot force people to run software, and everybody will have their choice of what software they want to run. But ultimately, I think we really do need to make a very strong, credible threat that is public and well known to the community that the core devs are going to be on the side of the not censoring train, and they will put forth effort to write the code that is necessary to do that. One of the things we can do to be even more proactive about this, besides just making a statement, we could, in theory, write the code in advance so that we're ready to do that. And all we have to do, should this time come, is basically fill in the list of addresses and we're done. And that would be a very, very strong, credible threat. Whereas if we're not willing to go that far, just publicly stating, and this doesn't have to be like official statements from teams or anything. I think this just has to be us, all of us core devs, being more vocal to the broader community and letting them know, hey, if someone starts reorging, if a cartel starts reorging blocks and censoring things so that certain transactions cannot get into the blockchain, we will take action within the scope of what we're able to do, which is we can write code, we can release code. And that's the action we will take. And I think having that commitment out there is a very powerful tool for deterring any kind of future attacker.
Thanks. Yeah, already some hands up. So Lucas.
Yeah, but not now. We are treading ground that we are the censors, right? And it's like give some moral implications, right? If we should have to do it, okay? It's something different when it's something built into protocol, and something different when we are doing something on a whim and on our like beliefs, or even if it's like community agreed, then it still can be corrupted easier. So
I
not
think
entirely sure.
Yeah, I think I'll hand over to Ansgar in a second because I suspect his response, because I've debated with Ansgar many times, is going to answer this. But the argument there is that if we're afraid of having something fuzzy, like we'll do something, then we should make a very clear statement in advance what exactly we'll do and under what conditions we'll do it. I'm assuming that's what you're going to say, Ansgar, so I'll let you take it.
Yeah, please.
Right. I basically just wanted to point out that I generally agree with Micah. I think threatening manual intervention, manual social slashing, however people call this, is a really dangerous tool. So I think we have to be very careful with committing on doing something like this. It has to be very explicit under which circumstances, so that there's no kind of arbitrary, no feeling of arbitrary punishment. And I think kind of the outline Micah gave was exactly right. It's basically, as I was saying earlier, like as long as that only some subset of proposals, basically everyone can include transactions or exclude transactions in their own blocks. What you're not allowed to do is reopt other people. And so in general, I think the framework to use this is that like we have all these misbehaviors that we can catch automatically in software, and we already slash you for that today. There's one just category of misbehavior we unfortunately cannot detect automatically, and that is just not following the fork choice, right? We have very specific fork choice rules, and like what you're supposed to view as the current head of the chain, and you're supposed to build on top of that chain. You're supposed to attest to that head. If you willfully deviate from these rules, and that could also be just for personal profit. So there, for example, these time-banded attacks, and this. So basically, there are a bunch of attacks where you just basically you willfully fork out blocks before you, and censorship is just one subset of this. All of these attacks, we would like to automatically slash you for that. The only issue is that we just cannot detect this automatically because it's undistinguishable on an individual basis from just latency in the network. So we can only take this on a statistical level. So like once you do this multiple times, or like you're a big pool or something, then we can detect it. And so unfortunately, it does require us to manually go in and slash you, but it is just an extension of the overall rules. And so like this is a very, I think there's not really slippery slope argument here. It's like a very distinct case. And I think it would be very valuable if we could all basically just pre-announce that this is what we would do. And I think in terms of implementation, by the way, I would prefer that by the time the withdrawals are live, we have at least implementations ready to have a manual hard fork to freeze withdrawals. So if ever anything went wrong, I think it would be really good if we could have within a few weeks just have a small fork that just freezes withdrawals until we can go in, and because otherwise people could just withdraw in time, right? So basically, I think having an implementation that like that ready to go just in case we ever need it, I think would go a long way in terms of deterrence. But yeah, I think that's all. And again, like the point is just it is a very specific category, and so there's no slippery slope here. It's just one thing we just don't allow you to do as a validator.
I saw Dankard, you had your hand up, but you put it down. I don't know if your comment was just addressed.
I think Ansgar has already put it very well. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any thoughts on this?
It's a technical note on withdrawals. So there's an exit queue. This exit queue can take quite a long time if a lot of capital is attempting to exit. So I don't, you know, in the event that like you do something slashable and you're not caught yet, or if one of these more social maneuvers, like it's actually hard to get a lot of capital out of the system quickly. So I don't think like a halting withdrawals is necessary actually because of the exit queue, just in most scenarios.
What is the time frame to, let's say I think for most of the attacks you need about 33% at least to do something meaningful. What is the time frame to exit a significant portion of that?
I think at this point we're at the Yankee maximum, so it would probably, or we're at the like point at which it stops that number stops increasing, so it should be at like a few months.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like 3 or 4 months to get a third of the capital out or something.
Okay. I'd be curious. I noticed a couple people in chat sounded like they were maybe against this general theme. I don't know if you guys want to speak out. Thomas and Martin, maybe you're making a joke. I'm not sure.
Sorry, Micah, can you repeat?
I think he was asking.
It sounded like a couple people in chat were opposed to this kind of social slashing sort of thing, and I was wondering.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's Bukash was expressing a similar feeling. I think that the protocol level solutions should be very strong, and you have the social consensus still as the final process to say, okay, we're rejecting what's happening, we reject the attacks, and that's what Vitalik was describing on Twitter as well. And that's what I mean. Like I want to have some kind of social, not consensus, like a last resort action, but start to say, okay, this is what we do, and we start to promote some behaviors. I think we should be able to do that properly through the protocol, through the encryption of transactions, through looking at the MEV-Boost infrastructure and understanding like how we can promote the decentralization, the relays, how we can follow the examples that we see already of just like opening source, more players coming to the market. And so far, the chain was reacting to the events like this by bringing the players that say, oh, this is an opportunity for me to show that there is an alternative that I can play here. And if we've seen so many players jumping to social media in the last 3-4 days saying we'll run non-censoring relays, we'll propose the alternatives, it means that so far things are working. I was a bit more worried about the questions of the large validator operators censoring or not, but they will also be looking at like, okay, like so if the community expects this, then the operators will appear that will say that they play other rules and it should all play fair. If the community is totally fine with it, then there'll be nobody offering the non-censoring relays. And then if you start be vocal about it and fight against it, then suddenly you're both against the community and against the protocol participants, and then it means that you're fighting your battle for some reasons, whether I believe this is a valid approach or not. But then you're actually censoring outside of protocol. So yeah.
And just for a little bit of clarity, I didn't mean for this to be related to the MEV relay thing. I think the relays, well, the relays do have the ability to kind of help facilitate coordination of this type of censorship. I was more concerned with the large validator pools, particularly several pools in the same legal jurisdiction that may come under pressure to attack the network from their governments. I feel like we should have some plausible defense against that, because those people may not have a choice to attack the network. Like they may be wrench attacked, so to speak, to attack the network. And I think we need a way to make sure that we're resilient against that class of attack.
So what we've seen in the past, we had the entire huge, sorry, Ansgar was before me. Was the entire category of players, proof of work players, the miners, moving to other countries because they were banned in China, right? So I think the same thing may happen here. If there is enough of the push for moving somewhere else, then the relays, the validator operators will appear in other countries. In the end, the network will be representing its community. Like, will you expect that the community will be located in the Western countries and operated in the Western countries? If so, then it means that actually that community want to follow these rules. If it's a proper global network, then you'll see representation of all those needs from different regions.
Right. I just briefly want to say in terms of how I see the kind of the interplay between, say, the social layer, the community, and core devs, is that, of course, at the end of the day, I think basically layer 0 for Ethereum is the community, and if there is some disagreement about rules, then the community has to choose ultimately. I think our role is basically just to set some defaults and basically recommend a way. And then, of course, if people ever really violently disagree, they can walk off, or take control of the network. But I think given that we are in the position to set defaults, I think it would still be very valuable here to just set the default of saying that specifically reorg, any reorg activity, any willful reorg activity is just against the rule set that, again, we recommend as a default to the Ethereum community. And I personally think right now, at least, that seems to be very much in line with what the community generally also wants Ethereum, the properties it wants Ethereum to have. Of course, that ever changes radically in the future, then we have to see about that. But I think, again, our role should still be to set sensible defaults. And I think having a zero tolerance policy on reorg behavior is the right path to go. And I would also just briefly say there that because it's such a dangerous tool, social slashing, and the kind of the threat of it, I personally would not want it. I would want it to be limited to this case. So any, if it's your block and you want to censor, I still think we should strongly discourage this, right, on all the other avenues that we have on Twitter and whatnot and everywhere. But I don't think the threat of social slashing should be on the table for that specific type of misbehavior. Really, just the reorg, because as long as we don't have this reorg style attack, the network as a whole will still include the transactions of everyone. So I think that's the important bit. But yeah, that's my take.
So two things from me. So one thing from Tomasz was that like example of banning mining in some places. I would expect that the regulation that would come from the West would be more sophisticated and more in the boiling the frog strategy. So they would go, each next regulation would be enough to justify leaving that jurisdiction, but they would compound more and more. So that's the risk I see. That's how I see the governments operate in general. In those terms. And the second thing, again, I would say the problem for me is that we are getting the whole blocks from MEV-Boost and whatever. I would rather prefer getting the transactions for the, and similar for proposal builder separation. Okay, this is maybe a little bit better, but I would again rather get a list of transactions and then each node doing something with it. But okay, this doesn't solve really the reorg part if they have the majority. So I don't have the solution, but I think that there should be something built into the protocol that could allow us to detect this behavior and then slash it, and then it's fine. But I wouldn't like to do it like manually because of we believe that this particular case is that it's like I don't like this solution. Those three things for me.
Thanks. Anyone have more thoughts, comments?
Can I propose some of the protocol level of counter censorship algorithm?
So I think, I mean, sure, yeah, if you want to take a minute, yeah, please.
Yeah, one of the possibilities is you have a subset of the transactions and then being proposed as fake block. And if it turns out that some of the validators, this slash is denying the validity of the transaction because of, like in this way, you can detect whether it's because of some address that they are interacting with or not. Then it can be bound into the protocol layer as an algorithm to slash them. That's one of the idea I have in mind.
So yeah, I think, for any like new designs or whatnot, this is probably just not the best forum to like explore them. Like these things have a ton of like implications and implementation concerns. So like, yeah, and not to say like that this is like not worth exploring, but I just think it's probably better to like write a proposal down and have people like chime in on it than trying to come up with a new design on the fly here. Yeah. Vitalik, yeah.
Yeah, I should mention that I've like written about this topic of like what I call censorship detectors or timeliness detectors. I've made a couple of ETH research posts on this. The basic idea would be that clients would run software that automatically detects like when censorship may be happening. And like, so by which you specifically mean like when block reorgs may be happening. And you can't give like you can't guarantee 100% agreement because 100% agreement would like implies consensus, which like by definition, or like we know we can't deal with more than 50% dishonest. But the idea would be that like clients would have a kind of either things would show, you know, either things look fine or things don't look fine, and maybe the user should do something. And then you know you could have a social norm that if the client says things look fine, then like the user definitely should not do something, and in the other case.
Thanks. I guess yeah. Just because I want to avoid us also going in circles on this topic, like bringing it back to like your original kind of ask, Micah, which was around like, you know, can clients commit that like we would punish this sort of not protocol, the sort of malicious behavior that's not visible within the protocol, but that's like clearly attributable when observing it. You know, it seems like at least there's like some amount of like disagreement of like at the very least to like the level at which that would be yeah, that would be necessary, and also like what's the best way to make that commitment. So yeah, I'm not super convinced we can get like a very clean answer out of this on this call. Yeah, Maris.
Yeah, so I think it's very important for each and every one to form their own opinion and say, okay, this is what I want Ethereum to be like. And so my personal opinion is, if we allow censorship of user transactions on the network, then we basically failed. And this is the hill that I'm willing to die on. And if we start allowing users to be censored on Ethereum, then this whole thing doesn't make sense, and I will be leaving I myself will be leaving the ecosystem and maybe start something different that provides these guarantees. And I think there are a lot of people that think the same thing. And I think censorship resistance is the highest goal of Ethereum and of blockchain space in general. So if we compromise on that, there's not much else to do, in my opinion. That's it.
Thanks. I see Lucas had his hand up, and then Martin.
Just one comment for that. I agree with Marius. I just want censor resistance from all core devs too.
What do you mean? Sorry, by that you mean like not...
Yeah, censor resistance from us, like if
right, not being able
like...
to alter the transactions
yeah,
or the state. Okay, I see. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Martin?
Right, like not wanting to.
Oh, sorry, can you do Martin and then Vitalik?
Yeah, I just also wanted to echo that I agree with Marius, and I think it's a lot more feasible to get individuals to state their preference or what you want to call it, than to have like the Geth official opinion is this, and the Nethermind official opinion is this. Yeah, what we have are personal views, and I agree with Marius.
Yeah, and to be clear, that was all I was asking for here. I definitely don't expect like all core devs to make some formal statement or the Geth team to make a formal statement, but I just wanted to say that like I think there is significant value in making sure that the community knows where the core devs individually stand. Like if they see 90% of the core devs will walk away if censorship occurs, and they can't stop it, then that tells the community that, hey, you know, if you want to fork off and do that, you can, but you're going to lose all your developers. Like, again, it doesn't have to be an official statement. I think just a lot of the community doesn't understand that many of us build this for censorship resistance specifically. Like a lot of them think we're building it because we want, you know, Ponzi schemes or whatever. And I think just getting that word out there that, you know, the people who are building this, the thing they're trying to build is this. And if you go and try to subvert that and you're successful, then we're either going to, you know, take your money or we're going to walk away.
And just for clarity, I assume, Micah, your personal opinion is that you would not endorse the censorship at the protocol level.
An evil supervillain and burn the world down.
But yeah, I think I do also, part of the reasons why I think this conversation is hard is like, I'll echo what Martin said, that like having official statements like doesn't work for many reasons, because we have like a very fluid governance process, because the Get team today might not be the Get team 5 years from now when we actually have to like resolve those issues. And so, yeah, I do think like individuals stating their preferences is the best you can hope for. I'm happy for other people who want to do that here to do it, but I also don't want to feel like people are forced to do this. Like I very much recognize that like doing it on a live recorded call is like not the way many people want to share their like opinions about contentious topics. Yeah. If anyone else have comments or thoughts they can share, like, yeah, we can definitely do it here. But yeah, somebody not sharing here shouldn't be seen as like some like support or like disapproval of like their position on this. Yeah. Arne the Dutch. I think you went back on mute.
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
yeah.
Hey, yeah, we got you now.
Hey, Jacek from Nimbus here. So I think one thing to remember as well is that there are many like theoretical problems in Ethereum that aren't being addressed because they aren't the biggest problem right now. But I think we can rest assured that should this start happening on a systemic level, it will also be treated much more seriously. I mean, for the governance and the open source process that we have, we tend to scratch the itch that annoys us the most, and this could quickly become one.
Right. Yeah, I would tend to agree there. And I also think the problems that end up showing up like for real tend to be a bit different than like the imagined model that you have of a problem. And so yeah, you want to make sure you're not like overfitting some particular imaginary case early on, and you can be open to deal with whatever the issue, whatever the issue actually is once it shows up. Anyone else have thoughts, comments they want to share before we wrap this up? Okay. Well, yeah, thanks a lot, everyone. I really appreciate kind of the discussion we've been able to have, and that everyone was very respectful and level-headed. Last, I guess, announcement before we head out. I will not be running the next of these calls, not because of today, but I had a planned trip for a long time. Danny will be running the next Alcore Devs, and I'll see you all 2 calls from now. And Mikhail has his hand up before we head out.
Yes, a small announcement on the EIPs 3675 and 4399. They have been moved recently to the last call. Like, yeah, with 2 weeks of the period for making any last call if anyone have it.
Nice. This is a great note to end on. Yeah. Last chance to lodge a complaint with the EL merge EIPs if you have one. Sweet. Yeah. Thanks again, everyone. And yeah, see you at the next one of these.
Thanks.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.